does it matter what kind of meat you eat? You know, there's this recent study comparing organic, like grass-fed meat versus CAFO or feedlot meat, and are there meaningful differences in or not? And what's your take on that?
So there are three primary differences between organic meat and conventional meat. The first is fatty acid profile. Okay, so organic meat has 47% higher omega-3 fat intake. And this is absolutely crucial because omega-3 fats are anti-inflammatory, and virtually every disease that could kill us in our old age is an inflammatory condition, and most Americans don't get enough omega-3 fats. So that's end of the story, basically. That's enough of a reason just to choose organic meat.
And it's significant, the amount of difference.
47% higher, that's not insubstantial.
I've seen even more than that in some studies,
so that's on average. You know, it depends on where the meat's coming from, and whether it's grass-fed or whether it's grain-fed organic. We'll come back to that. So the second difference is antibiotics. The definition of organic meat, one of them is that antibiotics cannot be used in the production of the animals. And in the conventional model, farmers use antibiotics to promote rapid growth. And what's interesting is we now understand how this works. The antibiotics cause a state of chronic dysbiosis. They disrupt the gut microbiome in the animals, and this predisposes them to gain weight. Well, guess what? That happens in humans too. So if we're eating the meat that has a little bit of antibiotics in it, we induce a state of dysbiosis in ourselves that could predispose us to gain weight. So actually eating conventional meat could theoretically put people at risk for gaining more weight because of a disrupted gut.
And by the way, this is something that the farmers know.
Absolutely.
This is why they use antibiotics, not just to prevent infection, it's a growth promoter.
Fatten them up.
Right, fatten them up.
Fatten them up. Yeah, and they've known this for years. What they haven't known was the mechanism. And now that we understand the mechanism, we see how that could actually transfer over into humans. It's even more reason to eat organic meat.
Oh, wait, I just have to tell a quick anecdote about farming, and then we'll go back. Because I remember reading as I was doing research for my book that the pig farmers, like in the 30s and 40s, wanted to fatten up the pigs. And they had all this cheap coconut oil. So they fed them all this coconut fat, and they started losing weight. And they were like, oh, shoot.
That didn't work out.
And then that's when they started figuring out
start with the gummy bears and all that
sugar,
stuff. Conventional, All right, so the third thing is pesticide residue. So we know that this is somewhat controversial area, but there are some studies that suggest that pesticide residue is associated with increased risk of ADHD and lower intelligence and IQ in kids especially, and may have adverse effects in adults as well. So those are the three main differences between organic and non-organic.
Well, I read recently there was a study that came out looking at even in organic, that the lamb and others had higher levels of pesticides, even if they were grass-fed, because of all the pollution in the environment. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other question, is just how we're screwing up the environment in general. But if you look at the research, typically organic meats will have lower pesticide residue than non-organic meats. But I'm glad you brought up grass-fed, because what we've been talking about is organic versus non-organic. That doesn't really say a lot about what the animals are eating. It's true that the definition of organic, that means they have to have access to pasture for, I think, 60% of the time. But there are meats that you can buy that are 100% grass-fed. And why would that be even better than organic animals that are fed some grain and some grass? Well, the grass is what contains most of the nutrients. So, vitamin A, beta carotene, vitamin K, and the animals biotransform those nutrients into active vitamin A or retinol and vitamin K2, which we then get when we eat those animals. So if you look at the difference between grass-fed animals and even organic grain-fed animals, you're going to see higher levels of a lot of nutrients across the board in the pasture-raised animals.
And they have higher levels of antioxidants.
Exactly.
All those interesting glutathione-producing nutrients.
Which, some scientists in these articles say, well, these aren't essential nutrients. Well, if you read Joe Robinson's book, Eat Wild, and you look at some of the recent research, they may not be essential in the sense that we can't live without them, but they're essential if we want to live well and be healthy. So if you look at a spectrum, I would say grass-fed, 100% grass-fed organic is cream of the crop, so to speak. And then we have organic, that's grain-fed and some grass, and then we have non-organic. And that's the kind of order that you should be shooting for.